Maria Santos stood at 5 feet 2 inches, her slight frame barely filling out the standard-issue military uniform that hung loose around her shoulders. The morning sun cast long shadows across the training ground as she clutched the heavy rifle in her small hands, trying to maintain her balance against its weight. Around her, fellow recruits towered above her diminutive figure, their snickers and whispered comments cutting through the crisp air like bullets finding their mark. "Look at that tiny thing trying to hold a real weapon," laughed Jake Morrison, a burly recruit from Texas whose biceps strained against his uniform sleeves. "She can barely lift it, let alone shoot it." His comment drew more laughter from the group of male recruits who had already formed their tight-knit circle. Excluding Maria from their conversations and camaraderie, Sergeant Williams blew his whistle, signaling the beginning of their first marksmanship training session. The recruits lined up at the shooting range, each taking position behind their assigned lanes. Maria found herself sandwiched between two of the largest recruits in her platoon, their broad shoulders casting shadows over her small shooting station. "This is a joke," muttered Kevin Thompson, the recruit to her left, as he effortlessly shouldered his rifle. "They're letting anyone join the military these days. What's next, sending children to war?" His words stung, but Maria kept her eyes focused forward, determined not to let their mockery break her concentration. The rifle felt impossibly heavy in her arms as she attempted to assume the proper shooting stance. Her muscles trembled under the weight, and she struggled to keep the barrel steady. The other recruits had already settled into their positions with ease, their years of hunting and recreational shooting evident in their confident postures. "All right, recruits," Sergeant Williams called out, his voice carrying across the range. "Today we begin your journey toward becoming marksmen. For some of you, this will come naturally. For others, it will require dedication and practice. Remember, accuracy beats power every time." Maria tried to absorb the sergeant's words, but the constant whispers and chuckles from her fellow recruits made concentration difficult. She watched as the others adjusted their grips and aligned their sights with practiced ease, their movements fluid and confident. "Santos," Sergeant Williams suddenly barked, causing Maria to jump slightly. "You're holding that rifle like it's going to bite you. Relax your shoulders and find your natural point of aim." The attention drawn to her only intensified the snickering around her. Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as she tried to follow the sergeant's instructions. The rifle seemed to have a mind of its own, the barrel wavering despite her best efforts to keep it steady. During the lunch break, Maria sat alone at a corner table in the mess hall, picking at her food while overhearing conversations from nearby tables. The other recruits shared stories of their shooting experiences, boasting about hunting trips and competition wins. She had no such stories to contribute, having grown up in a small apartment in Chicago, where the closest she had come to firearms was watching action movies. "I heard Santos has, never even held a gun before," she overheard one recruit say to his table mates. "My little sister could probably outshoot her, and she's only 12. The laughter that followed felt like a physical blow to Maria's confidence. That evening, while the other recruits gathered in the common area to bond over shared experiences and jokes, Maria remained in her bunk, staring at the ceiling and questioning her decision to enlist. She had joined the military to prove something to herself and her family, to show that she was capable of more than the limited opportunities her neighborhood offered. But now, surrounded by people who seemed born for this life, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The next morning brought another round of marksmanship training, and with it, more opportunities for her fellow recruits to showcase their superiority. As they prepared for live-fire exercises, Maria overheard Jake boasting to a group about his deer hunting exploits back home. "I've been shooting since I was 6 years old," he declared loudly, clearly intending for Maria to hear. "My daddy taught me that shooting is in the blood. You either have it or you don't." His eyes found Maria's, and his smirk made his meaning clear. When it came time for the actual shooting, Maria's performance was exactly what everyone expected. Her shots scattered across the target, nowhere near the center rings that seemed to magnetize the bullets from the other recruits' rifles. Each miss was met with barely concealed laughter and knowing looks exchanged between her peers. Sergeant Williams approached her position after reviewing the targets. "Santos, I need you to stay after training today. We need to work on your fundamentals." His tone was neutral, but Maria caught the looks of pity and amusement from the other recruits as they filed past her. As the sun began to set and the other recruits headed to dinner, Maria found herself alone on the range with Sergeant Williams. The silence felt heavy, broken only by the distant sounds of the mess hall and the evening activities of the base. "Tell me, Santos," the sergeant said, his voice gentler than usual. "Why did you join the military?" Maria hesitated, unsure how to articulate the complex mix of motivations that had brought her to this moment. "I wanted to serve my country, Sergeant, and I wanted to prove that I could do something meaningful with my life." Sergeant Williams nodded slowly, his weathered face thoughtful. "And what makes you think you can't do that?" The question hung in the air as Maria struggled with her answer. Around them, the empty shooting range seemed to echo with the laughter and whispers of her fellow recruits, a constant reminder of how far she had to go to earn their respect. "I don't know if I belong here, Sergeant," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone else seems so natural at this. Maybe they're right about me." The sergeant's expression remained unreadable as he considered her words, setting the stage for what would become the most important conversation of Maria's military career. Sergeant Williams studied Maria's dejected posture for a long moment, before setting down his clipboard and moving to the shooting station beside her. The evening air had grown cooler and the base had settled into its dinner routine, leaving them in relative solitude on the range. "Santos, let me tell you something about natural talent," he began, picking up a rifle and checking its action with practiced efficiency. "Every recruit who comes through here thinks they know what makes a good shooter. They think it's about size, strength, or growing up with a hunting rifle in their hands." Maria remained silent, still stinging from another day of poor performance and cruel comments. She watched as the sergeant effortlessly handled the weapon, his movements economical and precise. "The best sniper I ever knew was a woman named Staff Sergeant Lisa Chen," Williams continued, his voice taking on a reflective tone. "She was about your size, maybe even smaller. When she first arrived at advanced training, the other soldiers called her Mouse because she was so quiet and small." This caught Maria's attention, and she turned to face him fully for the first time since their conversation began. "Chen couldn't hit the broadside of a barn during her first month of training," Williams said with a slight smile. "The instructors were ready to recommend her for transfer to a different specialty. But something kept her on that range every evening, long after the others had given up for the day." The sergeant demonstrated the proper shooting stance, his body language completely different from the rushed, frustrated attempts Maria had been making. Everything about his posture suggested calm control and absolute confidence. What made her different wasn't her natural ability, he explained, adjusting his grip on the rifle. It was her determination to understand every single factor that affects a shot. While the others relied on instinct and muscle memory from their hunting days, Chen studied ballistics, weather patterns, breathing techniques, and the science behind marksmanship. Maria found herself leaning forward, genuinely interested for the first time since arriving at basic training. What happened to her? "She became one of the most decorated snipers in military history," Williams replied matter-of-factly. "Saved dozens of lives during 3 combat deployments. The same soldiers who called her Mouse ended up owing their lives to her precise shooting." The sergeant handed Maria the rifle, but this time his approach was different. Instead of barking corrections, he guided her hands to the proper position with patience and attention to detail. "The problem isn't your size or your background, Santos. The problem is that you're trying to copy what works for everyone else instead of discovering what works for you." His voice carried the authority of experience, but also genuine concern for her development. Over the next hour, Williams broke down every aspect of shooting into its component parts. He explained how Maria's smaller frame could actually be an advantage, requiring less energy to maintain stability. He showed her breathing techniques that could compensate for any physical limitations, and most importantly, he helped her understand that marksmanship was more mental discipline than physical prowess. "Your fellow recruits are shooting with their egos," he observed as Maria attempted another series of practice shots with an unloaded rifle. "They're trying to prove something to each other. But real marksmanship is about quieting all that noise and focusing on the fundamentals." As the evening wore on, Maria began to feel something she hadn't experienced since arriving at basic training: hope. For the first time, someone was treating her as a soldier with potential rather than a mistake waiting to be corrected. "I want you to understand something, Santos," Williams said as they prepared to clean up for the evening. "Every soldier in that barracks has something to prove. The difference is that some of them think they've already proven it. You still know you have work to do, and that's actually an advantage. The next morning brought another round of group training, but Maria approached it with a different mindset. Instead of focusing on the whispered comments and sideways glances from her fellow recruits, she concentrated on applying what Sergeant Williams had taught her the previous evening. When Jake Morrison made another loud comment about playing soldier with toys, Maria didn't react with embarrassment or anger. Instead, she remembered Williams's words about quieting the noise and focused on her breathing and stance. Her performance that day was still far from perfect, but there was a noticeable improvement in her consistency. A few shots actually landed in the outer rings of the target, drawing surprised glances from some of the other recruits. "Beginner's luck," Kevin Thompson muttered, but his comment lacked the confident mockery of previous days. After the group session ended, Maria approached Sergeant Williams with a request that surprised even her. "Sergeant, would it be possible for me to get additional practice time on the range?" Williams raised an eyebrow, studying her face for signs of the defeated recruit he had spoken with the evening before. What he saw instead was determination, mixed with a newfound understanding of the challenge ahead. "The range is available for personal practice from 1,800 to 2,000 hours, he replied. "But understand that means giving up your free time while the others are relaxing." "I understand, Sergeant." That evening, while her fellow recruits gathered in the common area to watch television and share stories from home, Maria made her way back to the shooting range. The facility felt different in the fading daylight, quieter and more focused without the crowd of competing personalities. She spent the first 30 minutes simply practicing her stance and breathing, working through the fundamentals Williams had taught her without even loading a rifle. When she finally began shooting, each shot was deliberate and thoughtful rather than rushed and frustrated. An hour into her practice session, she was surprised to see another figure approaching the range. Expecting Sergeant Williams, she was shocked to discover it was Rebecca Torres, one of the few other female recruits in their platoon. "Mind if I join you?" Rebecca asked, her tone friendly but uncertain. "I saw you heading this way and thought maybe we could practice together." Maria realized that she wasn't the only recruit struggling with the challenges of basic training, just the most visible target for the group's collective anxiety about their own performance. As the two women worked through their shooting exercises together, Maria began to understand that her real competition wasn't with the other recruits, but with her own limitations and self-doubt. The foundation for something greater was being laid, shot by careful shot, in the quiet evening hours when no one was watching. 3 weeks into their evening practice sessions, Maria began experiencing something she had never felt before. The rifle was becoming an extension of her body rather than a foreign object she was fighting to control. Her shots were grouping tighter and, more importantly, she was developing an intuitive understanding of how weather, distance, and even her own emotional state affected her accuracy. Rebecca had proven to be an excellent practice partner, and their evening sessions had evolved into focused training periods where they challenged each other to improve. Unlike the competitive atmosphere of the group sessions, their practice time was collaborative and supportive. "You're getting scary good at this," Rebecca observed one evening as they examined Maria's target. The grouping of shots was tight enough to be covered by a silver dollar, a dramatic improvement from her scattered attempts just weeks earlier. Maria studied the target with the analytical eye she had developed under Sergeant Williams's guidance. "I'm starting to understand what he meant about shooting being more mental than physical," she replied. "When I stop thinking about what everyone else is doing and just focus on the fundamentals, everything clicks." What Maria didn't realize was that Sergeant Williams had been quietly observing their evening sessions from a distance, noting her rapid improvement and the methodical approach she was developing. Her transformation from struggling recruit to dedicated marksman had not gone unnoticed. The next morning brought an unexpected announcement during their regular training formation. "Today we'll be conducting our mid-training marksmanship assessment," Sergeant Williams announced. "This will determine your classification for advanced weapons training and may affect your eventual military occupational specialty." The announcement sent ripples of excitement and anxiety through the group of recruits. For many of them, this assessment represented their chance to secure coveted positions in combat roles or specialized units. Jake Morrison cracked his knuckles loudly and grinned at his buddies. "Finally, a chance to show what real shooting looks like," he declared. his comment clearly directed toward Maria and the other recruits who had struggled in earlier sessions. As they prepared for the assessment, Maria felt a familiar tightness in her chest, but this time it was different. Instead of the paralyzing anxiety that had characterized her early training, she felt the focused tension of an athlete preparing for competition. The assessment format was more rigorous than their regular practice sessions. Each recruit would fire from multiple positions at various distances, with their performance scored according to military standards. The results would become part of their permanent military records. When Maria's turn came, she approached the firing line with a calmness that surprised even her. The weeks of evening practice had created muscle memory and breathing patterns that felt as natural as walking. She barely noticed the other recruits watching from behind the firing line. Her first series of shots from the prone position were precise and controlled. The tight grouping drew murmurs from the observing recruits, who had grown accustomed to her poor performance during group sessions. "Santos is actually hitting something today," Kevin Thompson remarked, but his tone lacked the mocking edge it had carried in previous weeks. As the assessment continued through different shooting positions and distances, Maria's performance remained consistently strong. Each shot seemed to build on the confidence of the previous one, creating a rhythm that felt almost meditative. From the kneeling position, she adjusted for wind conditions she had learned to read through careful observation during her evening practice sessions. Her shot struck the target in a pattern that would have impressed even experienced marksmen. The standing position, traditionally the most challenging for new shooters, proved to be where Maria's smaller frame actually provided an advantage. Her lower center of gravity and the stability techniques Williams had taught her allowed her to maintain control that some of the larger recruits couldn't match. By the time she finished her final series of shots, the observation area had grown quiet. The same recruits who had spent weeks mocking her performance were now watching with genuine interest and, in some cases, concern about their own comparative scores. Sergeant Williams approached the scoring table with the deliberate pace that characterized all his actions, but Maria caught something in his expression that suggested he was as surprised as anyone by what he had just witnessed. "Outstanding performance. Santos," he said, his voice carrying across the range with unmistakable approval. "Your scores qualify you for advanced marksmanship training." The announcement hit the group of recruits like a physical blow. Jake Morrison's confident smirk faded as he realized that the recruit they had all dismissed had just outshot most of them by a significant margin. "There must be some mistake," Jake muttered to his friends. "She couldn't hit anything a month ago." But there was no mistake. Maria's assessment scores placed her in the top 10% of recruits in their training cycle. A dramatic reversal that left everyone, including Maria herself, struggling to process what had just happened. As the other recruits completed their assessments, the atmosphere on the range had shifted completely. The casual dismissal and mockery that had characterized their treatment of Maria was replaced by grudging respect and, in some cases, open curiosity about how she had improved so dramatically. Rebecca Torres, who had shared Maria's evening practice sessions, performed well above her previous standards, validating the effectiveness of their collaborative approach to training. That evening, instead of the usual gathering in the common area, several recruits approached Maria with questions about her training methods. The same people who had excluded her from their conversations now wanted to understand how she had achieved such rapid improvement. "I heard you've been practicing every evening," said David Chen, one of the more serious recruits who had maintained a respectful distance from the mocking behavior of others. "Would you be willing to share some of what you've learned?" Maria found herself in the unexpected position of being sought out for advice by the same people who had dismissed her potential just weeks earlier. The transformation was surreal, but it also represented something deeper than just improved marksmanship scores. As word of her assessment performance spread throughout the platoon, Maria began to understand that she had crossed a threshold that went beyond shooting ability. She had proven that determination and methodical improvement could overcome initial disadvantages, a lesson that resonated with more of her fellow recruits than she had realized. The evening practice sessions that had once been her refuge from mockery now became collaborative training opportunities, with Maria finding herself in the role of mentor to recruits who had previously considered her a liability to their unit's reputation. The advanced marksmanship training facility was located on a different part of the base, featuring ranges that extended far beyond anything Maria had experienced during basic training. As she reported for her first day of specialized instruction, she carried with her the confidence earned through weeks of dedicated practice and the knowledge that she had earned her place among the military's most promising shooters. Staff Sergeant Patricia Murphy, the lead instructor for advanced marksmanship, was a compact woman with steel-gray eyes and the bearing of someone who had proven herself in combat. Her reputation preceded her, 20 years of military service, including multiple deployments as a sniper, and a training record that had produced some of the military's most elite marksmen. "Welcome to advanced marksmanship training," Murphy announced to the assembled group of recruits and soldiers. Maria was surprised to find herself among seasoned military personnel who had been selected for specialized training based on exceptional performance. "You're here because you've demonstrated potential beyond basic proficiency. My job is to determine which of you have what it takes for specialized roles." The group was smaller and more diverse than Maria had expected. Along with a handful of recruits like herself, there were experienced soldiers seeking to qualify for sniper school, military police officers upgrading their skills, and even a few special forces candidates who needed advanced marksmanship certification. Maria recognized several faces from her basic training cycle, including David Chen and Rebecca Torres, who had both qualified based on their improved performance. Notably absent were Jake Morrison and Kevin Thompson, whose early confidence had not translated into scores sufficient for advanced training. The first week of advanced training introduced concepts that went far beyond anything Maria had encountered. They studied ballistics tables, learned to calculate trajectory adjustments for various environmental conditions, and began working with precision rifles that cost more than most people's cars. "Marksmanship at this level is applied physics," Staff Sergeant Murphy explained during a classroom session on external ballistics. "Every shot you take is influenced by air density, humidity, wind speed and direction, the Coriolis effect, and a dozen other variables. Your job is to account for all of them." Maria found herself naturally drawn to the technical aspects of precision shooting. While some of the more experienced soldiers relied heavily on intuition developed through years of practice, she approached each lesson with the analytical mindset that had served her well during her transformation in basic training. During their first week of actual shooting exercises, the differences between advanced training and basic marksmanship became immediately apparent. They were shooting at targets placed at distances that required precise calculations and equipment adjustments. Missing the target entirely was not uncommon, even among experienced soldiers. "Santos, you're showing excellent fundamentals," Staff Sergeant Murphy observed during Maria's second week of training. "Your shots are consistent and you're adapting well to the technical requirements. Have you considered applying for sniper school?" The suggestion caught Maria completely off guard. Sniper school represented the pinnacle of military marksmanship training, reserved for soldiers who demonstrated exceptional ability and the psychological profile necessary for independent operations in combat environments. "I hadn't really thought that far ahead, Staff Sergeant," Maria replied honestly. "I'm still getting used to the idea that I'm good at this." Murphy studied her for a moment with the evaluative gaze that made her such an effective instructor. "Confidence will come with experience. What matters is that you have the discipline and analytical approach that separates good shooters from great ones." As the weeks progressed, Maria's performance continued to improve at a rate that impressed both her instructors and fellow trainees. She developed a reputation for methodical preparation and consistent results, often achieving better scores than soldiers with years more experience. The advanced training program included more than just marksmanship. They learned fieldcraft, camouflage techniques, observation skills, and the mental discipline required for long-duration missions. Maria discovered that her smaller size, which had been such a disadvantage in basic training, was actually beneficial for concealment and movement in tactical situations. During a week-long field exercise that tested all their acquired skills, Maria found herself paired with Sergeant First Class James Rodriguez, a veteran infantry soldier who was transitioning to a specialized reconnaissance role. "You move like a ghost," Rodriguez observed as they established a concealed observation post overlooking their assigned target area. "Most soldiers your experience level sound like elephants crashing through the woods." The Field exercise required them to maintain surveillance of a simulated enemy position while remaining completely undetected by roving patrols. It was Maria's first experience with the patience and mental discipline that defined real sniper operations. Over 3 days and nights in the field, Maria discovered capabilities she hadn't known she possessed. Her natural attention to detail served her well in recording enemy movements and patterns. Her small size made it easier to remain concealed in positions that would be uncomfortable for larger soldiers. Most importantly, she found that she possessed the mental calm necessary to remain motionless and alert for hours at a time. "You have natural instincts for this work," Rodriguez told her on their final night in the field. "I've worked with a lot of soldiers over the years, and you have something special. The military needs people like you in specialized roles." When they returned from the field exercise, Maria's performance evaluations were among the highest in her training class. Staff Sergeant Murphy pulled her aside for a private conversation that would change the trajectory of her military career. "Santos, I'm recommending you for sniper school," Murphy announced without preamble. "Your scores and field performance indicate you have exceptional potential for this specialty." Maria felt her heart rate increase as the implications of the recommendation sank in. Sniper school was notoriously difficult, with a high failure rate even among experienced soldiers. Success would mean joining an elite community within the military, but failure could affect her entire career. "I want you to understand what this means," Murphy continued. "Sniper school is one of the most challenging courses the military offers. The physical and mental demands are extreme, and many qualified soldiers don't complete the program. But based on what I've observed, I believe you have what it takes." That evening, Maria called her family for the first time since beginning advanced training. Her parents, who had initially been concerned about her decision to join the military, listened with amazement as she described her transformation from struggling recruit to recommended sniper candidate. "I'm proud of you, Mija," her father said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've always been determined, but this is something special." As Maria prepared for sleep that night, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her from being mocked for her inability to hold a rifle steady to being recommended for the military's most elite marksmanship program. The transformation still felt surreal, but she was beginning to understand that her success was not accidental. It was the result of dedication, proper instruction, and the discovery of abilities she had never known she possessed. The United States Army Sniper School at Fort Benning represented everything Maria had never imagined herself capable of achieving. As she stepped off the bus with 23 other carefully selected soldiers, she felt the weight of expectations and the knowledge that the next 8 weeks would test every skill she had developed and discover abilities she didn't yet know she possessed. Chief Warrant Officer Michael Harrison, the school's senior instructor, was a legend within the sniper community. His weathered face and calm demeanor spoke of 25 years in special operations, including deployments to every major conflict zone of the past 2 decades. When he addressed the incoming class, his words carried the authority of hard-earned experience. "Half of you will not graduate from this program," Harrison announced matter-of-factly. "This is not because we want you to fail, but because the skills you're here to learn cannot be faked or improvised. A sniper's mistake in combat doesn't just cost their own life. It can compromise entire missions and endanger other soldiers." Maria looked around at her fellow students and realized she was the youngest person in the class by at least 3 years, and one of only 2 women. The other students included special forces operators, experienced infantry soldiers, and military police officers, all of whom had demonstrated exceptional marksmanship abilities in their previous assignments. The first week of sniper school shattered any remaining illusions about the romantic image of military snipers, portrayed in movies and television. The academic requirements were intensive, covering advanced ballistics, meteorology, range estimation, and tactical planning. Students were expected to master complex mathematical calculations while under stress and time pressure. A sniper must be a scientist, mathematician, meteorologist, and tactician all at once, explained Instructor Sergeant First Class Lisa Park during a ballistics lecture. "You'll need to calculate precise firing solutions while lying motionless in uncomfortable positions for hours, sometimes under enemy observation." Maria discovered that her analytical approach to marksmanship which had served her well in advanced training, was essential for sniper school's academic requirements. While some of her classmates struggled with the technical aspects of long-range shooting, she found herself naturally adapting to the complex calculations and environmental considerations. The physical demands of sniper school were unlike anything Maria had experienced. Students were required to move undetected through various terrain types while carrying equipment that weighed nearly as much as she did. They practiced stalking exercises where the goal was to approach within 200 meters of instructors without being detected, a task that required patience, planning, and physical endurance. "Santos, your size is actually an advantage in stalking exercises," observed Instructor Staff Sergeant Kevin Walsh during her third week of training. "You leave a smaller signature and can use concealment positions that wouldn't work for larger students." The stalking portion of training became one of Maria's strongest areas. Her natural attention to detail, combined with her smaller physical profile, allowed her to move through terrain and establish positions that often went undetected, even by experienced instructors. During one particularly challenging exercise, students were required to stalk to within 100 meters of a target and take a single precision shot without being detected by roving observer instructors. Maria spent 6 hours moving less than half a mile, carefully choosing each movement to avoid detection. When she finally reached her shooting position, she discovered that she had successfully approached closer to the target than any other student that day. Her shot, taken from a concealed position that the instructors had difficulty locating even after she revealed herself, was placed perfectly in the target's center mass. "Outstanding work, Santos," Chief Harrison commented during the after-action review. "That was textbook stalking and shooting. You demonstrated patience, planning, and execution at a very high level." The psychological aspects of sniper training proved to be where Maria's transformation was most evident. The mental discipline required for long-duration surveillance missions and the responsibility of taking precise shots under pressure demanded a level of emotional control that challenged even experienced soldiers. During a week-long field exercise that simulated combat conditions, Maria found herself in a hide position overlooking a valley where mock enemy forces were conducting operations. She was required to maintain surveillance for 18 hours while recording detailed intelligence about enemy movements and preparing for potential engagement opportunities. The exercise tested every skill she had developed since that first day when she could barely hold a rifle steady, as she lay motionless in her carefully constructed hide, watching enemy forces through her scope and calculating range and wind conditions. Maria realized how far she had traveled from that struggling recruit who had been mocked by her peers. "Target acquired," she whispered into her radio as an enemy leader appeared in her scope's field of view. "Range 850 meters, no wind. Clear shot available." The authorization to engage came moments later, and Maria's shot struck the target with precision that would have been impossible for the recruit who had started this journey months earlier. The simulated enemy leader was neutralized with a single round, completing a mission that required every skill she had mastered. As the final week of sniper school approached, Maria's performance rankings placed her among the top students in her class. The transformation from struggling basic trainee to elite sniper candidate was complete, but the ultimate test still lay ahead. The final examination combined all elements of sniper training into a comprehensive assessment that would determine who earned the coveted sniper qualification. Students were required to demonstrate proficiency in marksmanship, stalking, observation, and tactical planning under conditions designed to stress their abilities to the maximum. "The final exam will test everything you've learned," Chief Harrison explained during the final briefing. "You'll need to plan and execute a complete sniper mission, from initial reconnaissance to target engagement, while being evaluated by instructors who will be actively trying to detect your presence." Maria spent the night before the final examination reviewing her notes and checking her equipment, but she felt a calmness that would have been impossible during her early days of training. The anxious recruit who had questioned her place in the military had been replaced by a confident soldier who understood her capabilities and trusted her training. The next morning, as she prepared for the final test that would determine her future as a military sniper, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From being mocked by fellow recruits to earning the respect of elite instructors, her transformation represented more than just improved marksmanship. It was proof that determination and proper training could overcome any initial disadvantage. The final examination at sniper school required Maria to plan and execute a complete mission over 72 hours. She was given intelligence about a high-value target operating in a simulated combat zone and tasked with conducting surveillance, determining the optimal engagement opportunity, and executing a precision shot while remaining undetected by enemy forces. Maria's mission planning drew on every lesson she had learned since that first humiliating day on the basic training range. She studied topographical maps, weather patterns, and enemy movement schedules with the same analytical approach that had characterized her transformation from struggling recruit to elite soldier. Her infiltration to the target area took place under cover of darkness, moving through terrain that would challenge even experienced soldiers. The equipment she carried weighed nearly 70 pounds, including her precision rifle, observation gear, communication equipment, and supplies for a 3-day mission. The hide position she selected offered excellent observation of the target area while providing concealment from enemy patrols that would be actively searching for her presence. Over the next 60 hours, Maria demonstrated the patience and mental discipline that separated snipers from ordinary marksmen. Through her scope, she tracked enemy movements, recorded intelligence about their operations, and waited for the perfect opportunity to engage her assigned target. The psychological pressure was intense, knowing that instructors were evaluating her every decision while enemy role players actively searched for her position. On the final day of the exercise, her target appeared at a range of 900 meters, moving through an area that offered only a brief window for engagement. Maria calculated wind conditions, adjusted for elevation and temperature, and steadied her breathing as she prepared for the shot that would determine her future. The rifle's report echoed across the valley as her bullet found its mark with precision that impressed even the experienced instructors, observing from concealed positions. The target dropped immediately, struck center mass by a shot that demonstrated mastery of every skill taught in sniper school. "Excellent shot, Santos," came the radio call from Chief Harrison. "Maintain position and prepare for extraction." Maria remained in her hide for another 6 hours, demonstrating the discipline to avoid compromise even after mission completion. When she finally received extraction orders, her emergence from concealment surprised instructors who had difficulty locating her position despite knowing her general area. The graduation ceremony at sniper school was attended by senior military officials who understood the significance of earning the sniper qualification. As Maria received her sniper badge and qualification certificate, she thought about the recruits who had mocked her inability to hold a rifle steady just months earlier. "Congratulations, Sniper Santos," Chief Harrison said as he pinned the badge to her uniform. "You've earned your place among the military's elite marksmen. Your performance in this course was exceptional." Maria graduated third in her class, an achievement that would have seemed impossible during her early struggles in basic training. More importantly, she had discovered abilities and developed skills that would serve her throughout her military career. Her first assignment as a qualified sniper took her to Fort Campbell, where she joined an elite infantry unit preparing for deployment. The soldiers she worked with treated her with the respect earned by her qualifications rather than the skepticism that had characterized her early military experience. 3 months after graduation from sniper school, Maria received an unexpected phone call that would validate everything she had achieved. The voice on the other end belonged to Colonel Sarah Mitchell, commanding officer of a special operations unit with a reputation for recruiting only the most exceptional soldiers. "Sniper Santos, I've been reviewing your training records and performance evaluations," Colonel Mitchell said without preamble. "Your instructors at sniper school provided recommendations that are frankly exceptional. I have a position in my unit that requires someone with your specific skill set." The opportunity Colonel Mitchell described represented the pinnacle of military sniper operations. Her unit conducted precision missions in support of special operations forces, requiring snipers who could operate independently in challenging environments with minimal support. "I'll be honest with you, Santos," the colonel continued. "This assignment will test every skill you've developed and demand capabilities you haven't discovered yet. But based on what I've seen, I believe you're ready for this level of responsibility." Maria accepted the assignment without hesitation, understanding that it represented validation of a journey that had begun with mockery and self-doubt but had led to recognition as one of the military's most promising snipers. As she prepared for her new assignment, Maria reflected on the phone call she had received from her former basic training instructor, Sergeant Williams, congratulating her on her achievements. He had followed her progress through the military's training pipeline and expressed pride in her transformation. "You proved something important, Santos," Williams had told her. "Not just to the military, but to everyone who thinks their initial circumstances determine their final destination. You're an inspiration to every recruit who struggles with self-doubt." The journey from mocked recruit to elite sniper had taken less than a year, but it represented a lifetime of growth and discovery. Maria's transformation proved that determination, proper instruction, and unwavering commitment to improvement could overcome any initial disadvantage. Years later, as an experienced sniper with multiple successful deployments, Maria would often think about those early days when fellow recruits questioned her ability to hold a rifle. Her service record included commendations for exceptional marksmanship, successful missions in challenging environments, and recognition as one of the military's most effective snipers. The rifle that had once seemed impossibly heavy and unwieldy had become an extension of her will, capable of placing bullets with precision at distances that stretched the limits of human capability. The small recruit who had been dismissed by her peers had become a soldier, whose skills were respected throughout the special operations community. Maria's story became part of sniper school lore, told to struggling students as proof that initial performance doesn't determine final potential. Her journey from mockery to mastery demonstrated that with proper guidance, determined effort, and unwavering commitment to excellence, any soldier could discover capabilities they never knew they possessed. The commander's call that had changed her life was just the beginning of a career that would see her become one of the military's most decorated snipers, proving that sometimes the most unlikely candidates become the most exceptional soldiers.